Which conspiracy theory makes too much sense to be ignored? That the pants industry and the purse industry are working together to keep women's pockets small in order to force us to buy purses. Jokes on them, I use a backpack. You fell right into the jacket industry's trap. Dwayne Johnson and The Rock might be the same person. Color film was patented by Edward Raymond Turner in 1899. But the exact process was purposefully kept in the dark up until 1935. Because concerns how the public would demand color pictures in newspapers, as color pictures would be the norm. If you look up the history of newspaper color printing and the development of color film, you will see there are a lot of coincidences. The Taylor Swift-Tom Hiddleston relationship was faked for a surprise album release that got cancelled after the Kim Kanye feud. The initial photos released of Tom and Taylor came from a paparazzi source that had never existed before and only ever distributed sold photos of the two of them and then disappeared after they broke it off. I think a lot of celebrity relationships are publicity stunts. Michael Jordan serving a suspension on the down low from the NBA when he went to baseball. The suspension being for gambling. I have my own follow-up conspiracy theory that Jordan's image means so much to modern American athletic storylines and narratives that the big media companies would never look into a story like this to confirm its veracity. Nor would they report on it in that case. Elon Musk is just an alien trying to go home. Michael Jackson's weird behavior and strange health problems can all be attributed to his being chemically castrated. His whole thing about being a kid. Yeah. He was literally a kid. He was chemically castrated to keep his voice high-pitched. This explains his lack of secondary 6 characteristics and wouldn't be all that strange considering all the other shit his father put him through to ensure the success of the Jackson 5. There have been multiple books written on this topic and it seems very plausible to me. That Brittany Murphy and her husband were murdered. I forget the exact details, but I think Brittany was working on a documentary with a whistleblower that worked with a certain part of the government. Then she passed away, followed by her husband shortly after. Both from pneumonia. The Denver airport is actually a place for the president and other important people of society to go for a natural disaster, apocalyptic threat, nuclear attack threat, etc. The airport went double the budget, suggesting that there could be some possible underground stronghold of sorts. A few years ago, there was a threat of a meteor striking Earth. And Obama just happened to be in Denver. I've watched videos about it. And the airport itself features many horrific paintings and other disturbing artwork. Overall, it's just a very strange place. Dr. David Kelly did not commit suicide mere days after exposing Tony Blair's lies about Saddam's weapons capability. He was murdered. He accidentally, tragically cut his head off while shaving. TWA Flight 800 was brought down by a missile. In the history of aviation, there has never been an in-flight explosion in any Boeing airliner of a Jet A kerosene fuel vapor air mixture in any tank, caused by mechanical failure. Commander William Sam Donaldson, US Navy attack pilot and internationally recognized accident investigator. Also, Raylar successfully won a court ruling that he was entitled to documents he had requested under a FOIA action. When the judge ruled in his favor, the FBI and CIA immediately lost the documents and never released them as ordered. The government occasionally stages small terrorist attacks and solves them to let the general public think that they are capable. One that's ignored here is the one of the Manchester Canal serial killer. But there have been a few more since, with the majority of deaths all fitting a similar profile: young, male, and been separated from friends. Yet everyone is dismissed as an accident by the police quite quickly. It's just very unusual. Too many people are dying along the canal for it to be normal. There are some disturbingly plausible theories about who actually killed JFK. The most convincing is that the mafia did it. Suge Knight stabbed Eazy-E with a syringe that had AIDS-infected blood, which in turn healed later. He pretty much admitted that he did it when he was on Jimmy Kimmel. I don't have the link, but maybe someone can link it. It's also super likely that Suge Knight played a part in Biggie's death. How about the theory that during the 2016 US presidential election, Putin contacted both major candidates to give them dirt on the other? Then after the election, no matter who won, he could leak the Russian contact story and throw our government into chaos with an eventual impeachment. During the impeachment, when we're distracted, Russia and China quickly make a lot of partnership deals in Eastern Europe and South America. When Deepwater Horizon happened, the US media kept referring to BP as British Petroleum to try and make it look like another country was responsible. BP hasn't been called that since the 90s. That United Airlines Flight 93, the flight that crashed into a field on 9/11, was actually shot down by the US military. Having already seen the other planes hit the Pentagon and WTC, the US govt would have known that the plane was heading for the White House. It is highly plausible that they would shoot it down before it reached there and conceive a story involving the heroism of those on board. That one day, the French are going to pour out of the Statue of Liberty and invade America. Then, in proper French fashion, they will promptly surrender. It's not really a theory, but Google up MKUltra. The theory is, naturally, that stuff like this is still going on. I think it's more common sense. But hey, anyone who thinks the US government, the wealthiest and most powerful entity in the world, would simply give up on psychological manipulation and alternative methods of consciousness and mental manipulation used to further their goals is fooling themselves. Ultra carried on under a different name. It's still going today. Chances are, they aren't playing fast and loose with it like they did back in the 50s and 60s. Humpty Dumpty was pushed. He didn't fall. FDR knew about the Pearl Harbor attack beforehand and allowed it to happen so he could justify US involvement in WWII. Any attack on the USA by Japan would have resulted in war. If FDR knew, he could have warned the fleet and ordered that Pearl Harbor be properly defended and nothing would have changed. In fact, that would have allowed the Pacific fleets to roll out even more quickly and therefore would have been prudent. Also, how could he have known? The administration suspected that Japan might betray them, so the Japanese ambassador was called in and asked about US-Japan relations. And the ambassador lied and assured them that Japan was still interested in diplomatic talks. The radar in the Pacific at that time was rudimentary and couldn't discern low-flying planes. The US Pacific Fleet did not have patrols on that route at that time. There weren't a lot of vectors for info about the attack to make their way to FDR. There was a whistleblower who reported on a city's police corruption. He filmed a van recording him in his house and it seemed professional because they were using a thermo tracking camera. On Facebook he posted, "If anything happens to me, it was them," or something to that extent. Days later his house was burnt down and his corpse was found and it was reported that he committed suicide. Mysterious huh? I'll post the link later. Edit. NVM. Someone else posted the link. Glad to see people become aware of this. That the Titanic was sunk on purpose. Watched a documentary about how they needed insurance money for the sister ship. Repainted and upholstered the ship. And sunk it. Apparently had an empty ship in the area to rescue people. But it received the wrong distress signal. Presented some evidence that it may have been switched with the Olympic. I wouldn't buy it. But it definitely shouldn't be ignored because it's plausible to be, considering the motives. There is definitely much more to the assassination of President Kennedy than just one crazy lone wolf. Just the fact that Lee Harvey Oswald could defect to Russia, give up his American citizenship, stay there for 3 years, marry a Russian woman, then come back to the US and get back into the country without any problems at the height of the Cold War, has never made sense to me. He was almost certainly on the payroll of the CIA. We also know he was seen with his later assassin, Jack Ruby, who had mob connections. Then there's the ridiculous magic bullet from the official Warren Commission report, so ridiculous that several members of the commission refused to sign on to it, which had to make some physics-defying turns and twists and hang still in the air at some point, to be able to account for the way the commission said things went down. We also see President Kennedy go back and to the left on the Zapruder film, indicating that the gunshot came from the front. We know that dozens of witnesses testified that the gunshot came from the grassy knoll. In 1976, a special House committee was formed to reinvestigate the assassination, and in 1979 they put out a report stating that the death of President Kennedy was most likely the result of a conspiracy. Flight 800 was shot down. My dad was a Navy salvage diver at the time and he had friends that did the salvage for the plane. My dad would have, but he got assigned to another job. During the salvage job, every one of the divers said it was clear that the plane had been hit by a missile because of damage done to the fuselage or something like that. Also, a lot of people reported a streak in the sky at the time the plane went down. A missile. Avril Lavigne was replaced. The theory that nothing really that special goes on at the Groom Lake Air Force Base, or Area 51. The whole aliens thing is pretty coincidental. Of course the government doesn't want you knowing what they do. It is a secure base for secret testing. It's to protect secrets less from us and more from things like the USSR. The alien spacecraft seen around is just experimental craft being tested. And of course it's at night. Why would they want the spies to see it? The biggest thing is how the government declassifies things that come out of the base. The U-2 and the SR-71 came out of Area 51. It's no secret now. Where else do you test a supersonic spy plane? The government covers up lots of stuff, but Area 51 is no big deal. Edit. I definitely 100% do not work for the government. The fact every nation invaded since 2000 did not have a national bank run by the Rothschild family. And the only 3 remaining countries that don't are ones the everyone wants to get into. Edit. OP asked for things that sound like they make sense. I never said I believe it. Scaramuxy is an FBI informant. His Twitter posts from last year were against Trump and pro-gun control, but now he loves Trump. Dude got pinched on financial crimes and turned state's evidence. It explains him selling his business to become a glorified spokesperson for a president that last year he said he doesn't like. That Jill Dando, wiki, was on the verge of discovering a pedophile ring in and around the British Parliament and high society. Seemed insane at the time. Before someone randomly knocked on her door and shot her in the face. MK Ultra. Maybe it's not a conspiracy theory considering it's all pretty out in the open now, but it tends to muster a that can't be true response. Basically the US experimenting with LSD on its own citizens for interrogation purposes. The Challenger got the go-ahead for the launch, against the warnings of NASA's experts, because it was the same day as Reagan's State of the Union address, and he wanted to be able to say, "Today we put a teacher into space." Gorbachev used to time Soviet launches to important speeches, since they were not announced in advance. If they failed, he wouldn't mention anything. The South Park theory on the US government's involvement in 9/11 is honestly the one which makes the most sense to me. The government had zero involvement in 9/11, however. They spread the rumor they did in order to make everyone believe they had the capability to pull something of that magnitude off. I don't know if there's an official name to this theory, but the collective mind theory, the theory that everyone is connected at a deep subconscious level. There's tons of evidence to support this. The biggest piece being specific tools different civilizations developed completely independent of each other but are nearly exactly alike. Think about the wheel, the bow and arrow, systems of government, religions, even certain repeating language patterns, as well as cases of people knowing things they shouldn't know. Whether that be someone coming out of a coma fluent in a language they've never heard before or claims to precognition. Twins are also very good evidence for this, since they theorize the connection between twins is thinner so that they are able to tap into it easier and more directly. WhatsApp isn't encrypted and the government can read your messages on it. They say that they can't, so that people blatantly send clear messages on it so that it is easy for them to spy people and pick up on illegal activity. McDonald's patented a product called 100% beef. Now they can say their burgers have 100% beef in them. The oil industry intentionally keeping MPG of cars low. Over 70% of Earth's oil consumption is used for transportation. Even a small percentage rise in fuel economy would result in billions of dollars less in revenue. The theory that Google, being an American military company portrayed as a private firm for future control and data,